Hello, this is Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica here with
The Flowing Dutchman.
And today we're going to talk about kettlebell juggling. So I tend to focus on much more basic stuff with people because that's, I think, the largest population of people who need to learn, but you focus a lot on very, very advanced athletic movements.
Yep.
Specifically a lot of kettlebell flow or kettlebell juggling. What do you think are the primary moves to master to get into kettlebell flow or kettlebell juggling?
Well, as you said, it is relatively complex.
Yes.
So you shouldn't start flipping the bell if your swing is off.
Yes.
Right? So
100%. I wrote a 3-year swing program
Yeah.
because I see people's swings not be up to the snuff
Exactly.
in order to do these more athletic things over time.
I know, but I also feel that it's something different in a way, because what is done with traditional swings, what is done with traditional presses, and just like with the Gada and mace practice, like the difference between those, the idea is, okay, you got one move, you got it with a certain weight, let's go up in weight. Let's challenge yourself either in volume or time, like that's the goal. So for me, once you've mastered the basics, then there's also a different area that you can move into, not necessarily upping in weight, but upping in complexity.
Well,
So-
yes, it goes up in complexity forever. The great thing about kettlebells and clubs and maces is you can never run out of things to do.
So that's why you can always use a relatively lighter weight, and that's what it makes it so versatile. So even with a 12 kilo kettlebell, you can get your heart rate up like that if you start to really focus on the complexity. Because what I noticed when I did this first, because I was into maces and clubs, I realized that, just getting the flip, I was so drawn towards, I have to get it. And then a double flip, I have to get it. So in my mind, I wasn't thinking, okay, 10 more reps of trying this. 20 reps of trying this. No, it was more like, I have to get it. And in that process of trying to get that flip, I did about 30, 40 reps. And I was like, so I had to take a breath. Because I was just out of breath.
Well, here's the interesting thing. So when you're doing your basics, you're trying to make every rep the same and more efficient over time. When you're working on complexity, there's all these micro movements that you're doing in order to try to accomplish the task, which causes you to be doing it different, which changes the load over time. You move faster, you move sharper, you lift higher, you do all these things. So even though each rep is eventually trying to be the same, the process of learning is so many other movement variables that go into it, and it forces you on accident to endure longer.
Yes, exactly. Well, the goal for the juggling part, or at least the flipping part of it, is just make it more complex. So the first thing that you have to do is just get a simple flip. That's the basics of it. So in the way that I'd like to do it, I can do a lot of stuff with the mace. I can flip it, and flip it always, basically the same way as you can flip a kettlebell. So for me, going to a kettlebell was fairly easy. But the thing I connected to it immediately was also doing the back swing, the front swing.
The mill.
Yeah, the mill in that terminology is you create circles around it. You can actually hold the kettlebell that way and swing it like that. And you swing it around your head, and in that way you can also do one-handed swings.
The reverse mill.
Yes, connect
to the
those
mill
together. So you get a similar idea of what you could do with the mace, connecting it to a front and back swing. That is the circular patterns, and then you can connect it to simple flips with double hands, so two-handed. And in that sense, you're now working on your ability to see the kettlebell floating and then catching it at the right time. Because the interesting thing about flipping kettlebells and maces as well is there's always this dead spot. Right? If you're doing a kettlebell swing here, you can basically let it go. If you're doing it correctly, because you get all the explosive power from the bottom part, from the hip.
But there's also, in physics, when something goes up, there's a moment where it stops moving before it starts coming down, and that's that float that we're looking for. And you're basically prolonging the float by adding circular movement to the item, right?
You're making use of that little floating time from all the power that you generated up in the bottom part from the hip, And in that sense, you can start to make use of that. So in a way, it is making it more complex because you're adding something to the part where you usually just, you know, are my hips straight, are my glutes activated?
Yeah.
Now you're actually flipping it. So the basic part is just start to flip it and then keep on doing that. And then there's, of course, the one-handed stuff, which is a bit more complex. There, I dropped it.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot, so you do need to find a space where you can drop it.
Do not do this indoors. Do not do this over your hardwood floor.
Nope.
Do not do this over a concrete floor because kettlebells, ironically, will break a lot of concrete floors, especially if you drop them 10, 20, 30, 40, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So, kettlebell, for most people, kettlebell juggling, the reason I tended not to teach it much is because we were always teaching in like a studio, like a movie studio or something. And if you're dropping kettlebells on a studio floor, you very quickly are uninvited to the studio.
Doesn't work. So you have to be really careful. When are you using this?
Yeah.
Because once you unlock this, you don't want to stop.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to find a place like this or you know, a grass mat, whatever it is, that you can actually drop it. Because the moment you start to, I've done it in my home where I picked up a kettlebell and just like, okay, just once, okay, now twice, and oh, it feels so good. And eventually you still drop it.
Yeah, and even a light kettlebell is still a cannonball. A 12K is still a 25-pound iron object slamming into your floor. So if you live in an apartment building, don't do it in your apartment building for absolutely sure. Don't do it in your garage, go outside. So I like to think of kettlebell training as like seasons. Like people used to train in seasons and kettlebell guys tend not to do that. We tend to have big long programs and run them forever. But I think of kettlebell juggling as like a spring, summertime thing. Because you can go outside and enjoy the world and go out.
That's the beautiful thing about these tools. Get out there,
get outside,
get some sunshine.
Get outside in the sunshine. And then
just also the effect of playing.
Yes.
Because workout is not always, I gotta get into an hour like this. Sometimes it's also about discovering, creating, and in that sense connecting the brain to the body, because you're also working on your coordination. You need, like I remember as a younger kid, I was always, when I dropped something, I was very quick to kind of drop it on my feet so it didn't break.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, okay, I'm pretty good at that, but what does that doesn't bring me anything in life. Like where else can you use that for? Well, this is actually where you can use that for, because you slow down time once you flip it. And because you know when to catch it, it becomes an automatic pattern. And in that sense, you're continuously working on that connection, just like what kids do when they play an instrument and they have to learn how to articulate their fingers and connect that to rhythm as well. So I think there's a lot to say for actually the discovering part of moving, outside of the fact that we're also trying to, condition and strengthen our body.
Well, the whole point of strengthening and conditioning your body is to actually do stuff. This is something that I think gets lost a lot in the modern world. People go to the gym just to go to the gym with no like further objectives outside of it. Like I go to the gym because I work for a living and I don't like to be tired when I'm working, or because I want to ride motorcycles better, or because I want to ride horses better, or because I want to do circus aerial arts. So for me, the point of doing kettlebells and clubs and all these other things is to do something else. But I feel like that's kind of lost in the modern world. But something like this gives people who no longer participate in some type of organized sport activity a thing that they can constantly get better at forever. Like you are never done.
No.
That is the good part about kettlebells and clubs. You are never, ever done.
One thing that's important to say about this, and this is like an adjustable kettlebell and it flips a bit differently, so you have to kind of adjust to when you're holding it. Ideally, a competition kettlebell for this is perfect, and the weight should be definitely less than you do for a regular one. So I think
definitely.
An 8 kilo, it's even 6 kilos. And what's that in pounds again? That's like
8 is 17.6 pounds. 6 kilo is 14.4.
Get the math nerd. Perfect.
14.4. Yeah.
So we need a kettlebell that is well balanced. So the cast iron ones, they don't work.
I know. I don't like them because also the size of the handle changes. But so it's unpredictable on how you're going to catch them.
it changes as the weight, the weight distribution changes as it continues. So you have to find a good kettlebell that flips and then moves in a straight line. The moment you have to start catching it because it's flipping differently, you have to get another kettlebell instead of being harsh on yourself that you're not good at this.
Yeah, the adjustable kettlebells actually have 2 nuts in them. You can actually balance the load for them, but most people aren't quite that nerdy, but you can actually do that on an adjustable bell.
Yeah, that's actually pretty fun.
I know. I like competition bells. They solve so many problems. One bell replaces, I think this one replaces 40 other kettlebells. So like you've been to my place. Yeah. That is half the kettlebells I own. There are like 40 kettlebells in there.
That's
I have another 40 on the other side of the planet. And now 2 of them replaces almost all of them, except anything above 32K. But most people don't commonly get above 32K because it just gets really, really hard and they get harder to transport. But light weights, you can get something out of them forever by just adding more and more and more complexity forever.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Hey.
There we go.